What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now. I'm Alex, and in this video, I want to talk about the game Spine. Now, this is a really interesting opportunity, something that I haven't really had that much experience in, so bear with me, throughout this entire video. I was actually reached out to by the developers of this game, and they said, hey, they've seen my stuff, and do you want to do some sort of preview type thing for this game? And on top of that, is there any questions that you would like answered? And I thought, you know what? I've seen this game. I've seen clips of this game on Twitter. This game looks phenomenal. I'm going to let a lot of the clips kind of do the talking for me. But I do have, I don't know, exclusive info. I tried to ask about the game's length, about kind of different features. Hopefully I did a good enough job. And, hey, if this does well, maybe we can do more stuff like this in the future. So without further ado, let's kind of talk about this game. Again, now, when I first was introduced to it, okay, through Twitter and whatnot, it reminded me of like Sifu with guns. Okay, now funny enough, I wanted to have that addressed, so I literally asked them that specific question that we'll go over later on in this video. How do you feel about Sifu comparisons? But you look at this game, and to me, I've always said this, right? Martial artist here, and not to gloat or anything, but no, I mean, I look for games that are like this, right? I try to study them, the Sifus of the world. I mean, honestly, you can even go back to like the Arkham games or Spider-Man when there is this kind of martial arts presence to it. I think it's just honestly so unique and so creative and kind of that free flow. I mean, it's all kind of built from that free flow type system, right? Those games are addicting. Those games are a lot of fun to play. They've been done time and time again. And to be honest with you, they never really get old, especially because everybody's kind of got their own thing with it. Now, again, you look at this and you say, oh, Sifu kind of with guns, right? So similar kind of vibe in terms of that martial arts presence and, the reactionary, like somebody attacks you, you're blocking, you're attacking, but then you also have the guns and a little, cyberpunk-esque type situation going on. Looks, again, as I've said, very, very cool. This was always a game I wanted to cover, and I will absolutely be covering when the game does release. No release date. I couldn't get, that absolute breaking information. But okay, what I want to do, let's just simply go through it. I was in email communication with them. I asked them 6 questions. Super nice people, by the way. You want to support a game from people that are just like genuinely good people. I feel like this is also a game. I don't know if everybody does that, supports games for that reason, but if you care. Okay, let's go over my 6 questions. Let's go over their 6 answers. So firstly, I just wanted the length. I'm a big length guy. I just want to know how long this game is going to be. So I literally said, what length are you shooting for? And they said it'll take somewhere between 10 to 15 hours, which I got to be honest was much longer than I thought. You see these games and you kind of think they're more, and they are, experimental, especially maybe if you don't recognize developers. Oh, is this their first game? It's actually not their first game, but you think, okay, is this like a 2-3 hour like tech demo-esque thing? And the answer is no. No, it is not. So 10 to 15 hours depending on the player's skills and willingness to participate in side activities. Our first priority goal is to not water the game down and make the gameplay as action-packed as possible. Each level for us is like a standalone short action movie. We want players to ride a gun-fu roller coaster and never feel bored for even a second. Now, I talked about, because if you look at, there's not too much. There's clips, there's, a couple like minute-long kind of segments. There's also screenshots. So I try to look at the screenshots and say, okay, what can I ask them, based off these screenshots? You see at least one boss, in the screenshot, and that got me thinking, all right, got to ask about those bigger enemies. I mean, you think about that with the Sifus in the other games of the world, it always ends in some epic way with a boss. So I said, it seems there'll be bosses. Is there any details? Number of them? Are at the end of the missions, etc. Bosses are a crucial part of Spine, and a thing we really like to develop, actually. Our previous game had a lot of bosses in them. We've already shown 2 of them in our trailers, a guy in an exoskeleton with a rocket launcher, and a cybernetic spy master who has her own spine on her back in Spider Mines. The game will feature both bosses and mini-bosses, with amount of serious bosses around 10 and roughly the same order for mini-bosses. Each of these serious bosses will have unique characteristics, weapons, personalities, and a backstory related to Redline, who is the main character of the game, which will significantly impact the combat mechanics for each fight. In our universe, bosses often have spines of their own, which makes their combat mechanics unique variations of gun fu styles based on their guns. When creating a boss, we focus focus on the core principles of the project. Their 4 key principles are gun fu combat, impressive and realistic animations, which you definitely see quite often, cinematic aesthetics, which pay homage to cult movies from time to time, a captivating combat system, and a strong sense of I am the hero. And just to not to like bow down to them, you know, all this kind of stuff, but that whole like impressive and realistic animation, that is like a thing that really, you see these clips, you see these 5-10 seconds clips, which by the way just keep getting better, I would say, as time's gone on. This game's been in development for an okay amount of time. That's what stands out, is like, ooh, this looks really kind of flair. There's like a flair to it, so I really like that. So then I thought, okay, thinking about Sifu still, and we're going to address that because I probably should stop that comparison, but I'm going to do it for like one more question. But I was thinking, all right, these type of games, you know, 10-15 hours, that's a good length of time, right? So how I thought of it was, okay, these kind of linear levels, not like Black Myth. Black Myth is maybe a little bit too open, but yet again, you never know. But these levels that are definitely designed to push you from one area to the next, right? You got your encounters with different enemies, you got your mini bosses, you got your bosses. But then there'll be like corners of the map, corners of this like linear path that you're able to go to do some random thing. So I was trying to get at that with this question. I don't think I asked it that well, but I do think the answer was pretty good. So I said, how are levels broken down? We see snippets through the clip so far, but linear style missions, slight open world level to explore and collect. That's kind of what I meant, these linear type things that you can go left or right, but you don't go too deep down left or right. You have to kind of go eventually down the middle. So they say the game is mostly linear and focused on delivering an action movie experience, and there is no open world, but we want the players to feel immersed in our world, which has extensive lore, so the locations are designed to encourage exploration, find beautiful corners to use in photo mode, and discover collectible items. So that's exactly what I was looking for, right? Not like 50 hours of extra stuff. I never expected that. I don't think that's the game. That's the type of stuff for this game, but that is kind of what I was going for. Okay, now I wanted to do the Sifu thing, so let's get into that. Sifu influence seems strong. What would you say if someone brings up Sifu in comparison to your game? I was literally kind of conscientious of this and thinking, I don't want it to be like a negative thing. Now, honestly, I don't think if you compare a game to another really amazing game, even if it's not the same type of game, I don't think that would be insulting to anybody, but I just kind of wanted to throw it out there. What would you say, right, if somebody says, oh, Sifu with guns, or that reminds me of Sifu, and that's exactly what they say. We love Sifu, and when people call our game Sifu with guns, we take it as a compliment. Sifu perfectly captures the vibe of kung fu action films while also being a pretty cinematic game. And gun fu is in some ways a development of the kung fu genre, which is evident even in its title. But actually, our game focuses more on free-flow combat experience of overcoming big waves of enemies and doesn't have this feeling of kung fu duels and becoming a master through struggle as in Sifu. They know their lore, these people. That said, Spine is more close to the Arkham series / Spider-Man than to Sifu. We want Spine to make players feel a bit overpowered while beating a lot of opponents at once, like they're starring in a gun fu film like John Wick or Equilibrium. Oh my dear God. We also want to bring new players to the beat 'em up genre and not aiming for a hardcore experience, though there will actually be a hardcore mode for the players who love the challenge. I love that actually quite a bit. So not too, I think that's probably important. Maybe I should have leaned into that and asked them a little bit about that, but I didn't know. I didn't know how close to Sifu that we were going to go in terms of comparing it. So not as difficult. I mean, I'm just going to make that assumption right now. Sifu is a tough game. That game is challenging, and there's something very rewarding, at least to me, with those kind of challenging games, but not every game needs to be like that, right? The fact that this game is supposed to kind of be a little bit more open, a little bit more, I would say, welcoming in that way, right? But you could also have that hardcore experience if you wanted it. But I mean, I think that's probably my best question, and I think the best answer, not to pat myself on the back or anything, but you got comparisons to John Wick. You literally got free flow out of it, so more like the Arkham game, Spider-Man. I mean, we've said it before, like Middle-earth did this, Shadow of Mordor and War, Mad Max. I mean, everybody kind of has their slight variation, their slight twist on it, and this one you can kind of see quite obviously, right? So love it. Honestly, really, really like it, and I'm glad I asked them that question. And I said, what kind of story are we looking at? A silent protagonist? They said, no, we love telling stories and creating characters. The game is very focused on narrative, and Redline is a character with a bright personality. She is bold and hot-tempered character who never holds back her words. A key part of her personality is that she often acts first and thinks later. Sometimes when Redline tries to solve a problem, she spawns a few more, and so on. This drives her narrative conflict with her spine, a rational AI that you can say opposes her and tries to calm her down. So the main conflict of the story is them learning to trust each other while exploring all the beautiful locations in our world, facing various opponents. Of course, all this happens within the framework of a larger story connected with the fate of the city where they live, but that is another topic. We do not want spoilers here. That's very true. It all starts with Redline deciding to save her brother from the clutches of the system, but events begin to develop around her, and the fact that she gets a super valuable and rare implant spine. And I say we saw a screenshot of the skill/ability tree, and that's again on like the Steam picture type thing. So how does that work? They say there's 2 skill trees. One is about main abilities of the character, which are about Redline spine synchronization level and allow her to do more gun-fu stuff, like using an opponent as a living shield while shooting at another foe. And the second one is smaller and related to her spray can and being a graffiti artist. Spine won't have ability builds, although we would be happy to think about that in the sequels if there would be any. And skill tree in our game is more about becoming a stronger gun-fu fighter and gaining more spectacular moments and attacks. The total number of abilities can be seen on the screenshot in Steam. I can say that we do not like abilities in the spirit of 5% of the character's health and are focused on abilities, giving the player new mechanics and animations. Love that answer as well. So hopefully this brought in some sort of new info to you. I gotta be honest, like going into this thing, like I said, it's got a way of catching your attention. I believe. I think that when this game comes out, it actually is going to be something that people will talk about. I think it's just got that style. I think it's got, honestly, and I don't think it as a bad thing, it's just got that kind of cool factor that you see a small clip and you say, oh, I gotta check, where did that come from? Right? Where did that clip come from? So I'm really excited for it. And then actually, being able to do all this, I feel like I'm much more excited because it goes from cool concept to, oh, this is a good, well-rounded thing. And honestly, and I've said this before, like not trying to compare it to all of these, but just like a similar kind of idea in my mind. When you see the Black Myths and Stellar Blades and Sifus and all that stuff, it's hard it's hard to like 100% trust these games in when you see these 10, 15, 20-second clips, when you see a boss fight, from XYZ game, which you do quite often. Phantom Blade Zero is a game coming out, right? That's like that. You see these small little clips and you say there's a lot of potential there. Again, there's something that kind of stands out. And then you wonder in your mind, okay, is it just that? Like, is there even the rest of the game being developed? Is the rest of the game well-rounded? And that's always a question that I kind of ask with a lot of these games. Again, not trying to say Spine is the equivalent of Black Myth or Stellar Blade, but the idea that you see something, it jumps out at you, it says, okay, there's something interesting here, but is there like an actual game around it? I feel like that's kind of what I wanted to get to, in this video and in these questions. And I feel like there is an actual game, around just the cool things that we saw or you've seen maybe before on Twitter. So again, I super appreciate the opportunity. Let me know, your thoughts in the comments. As I said, no matter what, I don't care if they never talk to me again. This was always going to be a game that I planned on playing and I planned on covering on the channel. So I will do just that. Okay. Thank you for watching. Make sure you're subscribed, bell icon, all that jazz, and I'll see you on the next one.